Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's Q&A video. We got a fancy intro. So first off, let me just say I am getting over a cold. So if I sound a little funny at points, that's what's up. Although at the same time, I feel like there are times where I will see other YouTubers say things like, if you can hear that I have I sound off, it's because I have a cold. And I'm like, I couldn't even tell. So maybe you can't even tell, but I just thought I'd say that at the top. So I went on Instagram this morning and I asked you guys for questions. I said, ask me anything. I'm gonna film this video. So that's where I got my questions today are from Instagram, or is from Instagram? I don't know, guys, bear with me, intros are hard. The first thing I wanted to say though, before we hop right in, is that today's video is actually sponsored by my Patreon. Ooh. And I'm saying that because if you guys like this type of chatty, more intimate content, and if you like to dip into maybe like controversial content, if you didn't know, I have a Patreon where I not only upload exclusive content, but most of it tends to be like, once again, chatty type content where I'm going through things a little more in depth, doing more deep dives, which I guess means the same thing, and sometimes touching on controversial things, faith. That was my washer or my dryer, not sure. I cover all kinds of things over there. I recently uploaded a video called It's Not About the Weapon and I Don't Trust the News. I uploaded a video just talking a little more in depth around my miscarriage and some of the health things that are kind of changing moving forward. I talked about 6 months ago, and I actually reshared this video recently, about how I can be pro-life and pro-medical freedom. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed sharing all of that over there on Patreon, and I've enjoyed the community that we've been building and just having those conversations. So that's the first thing. So I'm gonna have to look at my phone. I'm recording audio on my phone, but that's actually where I have all my questions. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. I need to look at my phone though. Okay, so all of these questions are in no particular order because I literally just opened up the question section on my Instagram. And so I'm gonna start by answering this first question. And this is from Vicky VJR. Actually, I don't even know if I'll be shouting out each person that does the question. We'll see how this goes, guys. I'm a little all over the map. But she asked two questions that are kind of similar. And that was advice that I wish I had gotten before I had Logan and things that I'm planning on doing differently with baby number 2. So I don't know necessarily what I plan on doing differently. Actually, I mean, I'll say this, God willing that I am able to have another child, hopefully a few more children. I plan on doing a few less interventions this time around. So I know that's like not when they're earthside, that's when they're in the belly, but I plan on doing hopefully less ultrasounds. I plan on not doing the gestational like diabetes drink, and just keeping it like really low key, but that's kind of random and I guess not very much. Like those are just some random things. As far as things I'll do differently or stuff that I wish I had known before, the funny thing is I don't have any advice that's groundbreaking or anything that it's like, wow, like I wish I had known that, because it was stuff that I had heard before and stuff that was said to me. But like so many things in life, right? People saying something to you and telling you things is very different than you living it. And so one piece of advice that I did hear before I had Logan, and I still continue to hear, and we've all probably heard, is that there's not really one right way to parent. Like every family is different. And I already thought that and believed that and kind of knew that going into motherhood, parenthood. But having Logan and then seeing the last 2 years has really that's brought that out in me even more. I'm definitely innately like an unschooler, homeschooler type personality who tends to just really believe that if you equip kids with, resources and stuff, that they want to learn. They want to essentially grow up and they want to progress. And so they're curious, right? And so I feel like that starts right from the very beginning, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, geez, I have a 2.5-year-old, so I don't know anything about anything. But that is kind of where my head's at, is so many things that maybe I stressed out a little bit. It just doesn't seem that worth it now. And that's kind of what I mean about like having to live through it. And also kind of backing up, I really do think every family is different. So like I was even talking to Dan recently about the whole unschooling thing. I was on Pinterest like reading to him a bunch of quotes that I had pinned recently from like, I think his name is John Taylor Gatto. I can't remember exactly his last name, but he wrote a book. He was like the New York public school teacher of the year a while ago, maybe in like the 90s or something like that. It may be way older than that. It might be like the 70s. I don't remember. But he ended up leaving the system and he wrote like, not an expose, but kind of sharing why he thinks public schooling is not really like the best we can do for our kids. And that book is actually, to my knowledge, kind of the main thing that ended up convincing my mom to take the plunge into homeschooling. But I was talking to Dan about this the other night, and even though I believe those things and I have those feelings about schooling and education and kids' personalities, I also simultaneously hold this belief that I'm like, well, I don't necessarily know if that's true for everyone. I don't necessarily think everybody is made the same, obviously. And I do think that different families and, like genetics, culture, upbringing, trauma, history, all kinds of things like within a family unit make people unique, set them up with different talents, set them up with different interests. And so I think that every family, similar to a lot of things in parenting, they have to make the decision that they feel like is best for them and best for their child, really. And I think that's going to be different for each family because I think people in society play different roles. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, a doctor, a surgeon is not going to be an unschooler necessarily. Although they might be in their youth and then maybe they might go and get the certifications they need in order to become a surgeon. But my point is there are like specific things that surgeons learn. Like people play different roles in society. And so I think that families and education and all of that, like the way people run their lives is going to look different. And I think that people should have the freedom for it to look different. Which you guys already know, that's like part of the reason we moved to Idaho. Idaho has really great, well, they have some really great laws across the board. Like definitely Idaho is one of the most free states in regards to, am I even allowed to say the words? Vaccines, for example. They give exemptions for like everything, psychological exemptions, philosophical, maybe that's what it is, philosophical exemptions, religious exemptions, and physical exemptions. And so they let you do what you got to do. And then they obviously have great laws, if I didn't already say that, regarding homeschooling. So, yeah, that was kind of a side tangent. I want to stay relaxed in my parenting, and I can't say that I didn't know that ahead of time, but you experience things, you see your kids learn things, and what is that? Experience is the best teacher. And I don't have a lot of experience. I only have 1 2.5-year-old. So I got to get these questions popping or we're never going to answer more than like 2. Someone asked, what kind of literature are you reading and teaching to Logan at this point? And what I read to Logan is very broad. So a lot of just what I've read to him in general is just like following my gut and what makes sense. So once again, this isn't from the perspective of right or wrong. I'm just giving you a snapshot into my brain. When Logan was very young, pretty much primarily all I read him for maybe that first 6 months to a year, maybe, was books that had real imagery. And my mind kind of thought of that because I've heard people, and I want to say like Maria Montessori, I think that's her name. She had said that kids can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality before the age of 6, which sure, I kind of buy that. That kind of makes sense. But I will say this, and this goes back to what I was saying before about every family being different and people being different. I don't know if I believe that. So that kind of was a tangent off of like, so the first year it was all books that were real pictures, real images. And then I started branching out because I found like some lovely books that I felt like were still kind of portraying reality, but they were like beautifully drawn books or just lovely books in general. And here's the thing, let me say this. There's 2 things that I've seen my son do that I've heard educational experts say is not a thing. So that's the first one, the whole not being able to tell reality from fantasy. My son totally pretends. Like he will take other objects and pretend there's something else. And he'll like tell me that he's doing it to let me in on it. So like Logan's really fascinated by the blower, which is like a leaf blower thing that my parents have. He will grab other items and draw to my attention like, Mom, it's a blower. Like, he's letting me in, that he's pretending. And he'll do that with all kinds of things. Like, I can't think of other examples, but he will straight up pretend. And then the other thing is so classical Christian education, there's like specific ways of like how they teach kids in different phases. So recently I've kind of been on this kick of listening through different podcasts and books on the Canon Plus app, which Canon Plus is an app through a church up in Moscow, Idaho called Christ Church. And they put out content on their app. And I've been listening through some of the content. The guy that like started that church also started a program called ACCS, if I believe that's what it's called. And it's like a private Christian school association. And so they have a really specific way in which they teach kids. And they think that kids at this age should learn these kinds of skills. Kids at this age should learn these kinds of skills. It's like 3 sets of like how they break everything up. But one of the things that I heard one of them say was that like little kids, and I don't remember exactly the context of the conversation, but I remember the exact statement was that you're not going to hear a 2-year-old going around reciting their ABCs. And they were using that kind of within the context of trying to like explain their teaching method. And I literally was like, my son totally walks around saying his ABCs. Like, all the time he says his ABCs. Like, we're working on spelling right now. So I just think that that's very interesting to watch and observe the different ways in which kids learn. And I've mentioned this before on my channel, maybe not. But, growing up, the first play that I really did, I got cast as Annie. In Annie, the sun'll come out tomorrow. I swear I sang that differently than that. But I played Annie, and it changed my life. I loved it. But I learned in that show, for example, I couldn't learn my lines without learning the whole play. So I knew everyone's lines because it made more sense to me to learn the full context of everything and how my lines fit in versus just my lines. Like, I couldn't learn just my lines. It didn't make sense without the full context of everything. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is really interesting because apparently everyone's brain works differently, because I don't know. Is that common? Is that the way people memorize? I don't know. And so that's really the point. People learn differently. So backing up to your original question after I said I was going to answer it shortly and then went off on a 12-minute blabbering session. Originally, it was just books with pictures, like real pictures in it. I say loved because we haven't read them as much recently, but I still do love them. The Love Every books, or at least a chunk of them. There's a couple that we don't have in the collection for different reasons, but most of them I really love. And now there's not really any particular type of curriculum that I like read to him. I love going to Goodwill because our Goodwill out here has amazing children's books, like super high quality books I've been able to find there every time I've gone. And pretty much I follow my gut, I see where Logan's attention span has been in recent time, and I'm always trying to push it or expand his language or maybe reach into different topics. He loves books, about animals, but I try to also do books that involve actual children. Lately, we've been doing like some classic fairy tale books. Here's one way to put it. I like books in general that are like lovely, if that makes sense, and almost kind of have not a classical vibe, but like I'm not a big fan of super modern, like bright colors, crazy illustrations, funny animals that aren't really animals, that are different shapes, and all of that kind of stuff. I like things, I guess that's the best way I can put it. I like things to be lovely, and not too jarring, if that makes sense. We have one electric toy in our house for him. So that kind of gives you an indicator too, like kind of the train we're on. Actually, that's ironic because the one electric toy he has is a train. It is a Thomas the Train. And he loves that thing. And I think part of the reason he loves it is because it's the only electric toy he has. And actually, that's not true. He has drills that are totally electric and use batteries. But in general, I'm not into like the bright, flashy lights and all of that. Once again, just a preference thing. And once again, we go back to, I think your preferences can sometimes speak a lot to like, I don't know, potentially even maybe how your kids are and potentially what's best for them. And you guys know I'm a high energy, like go person, like doing a lot of different things. I don't know what that was. That was me with ADD. And so The electric toys just don't tend, like the bright lights, whatever, don't tend to vibe with me. And it's the same thing with books. I want the books to be kind of chill. Do I need to repeat myself? I think you get the gist. I think you got the gist. Someone asked me if we are considering getting any more animals. And the answer is definitely yes. We want chickens so badly. I can't even explain it to you. So hopefully they'll be coming soon. But I'm not kidding when I say like we're still getting our life set up here. And the chicken thing really comes down to Dan and how he feels, because he's really going to be the one helping get everything set up and getting it going. Like my help and input doesn't even really like matter at all till they're laying eggs. Even then, Dan always was the one. Not that I wouldn't have segued into that, because it's all like a process, right? And so I can learn things and do things, but he was the one initially that really learned. He built the chicken coop. He would clean out the chicken coop. He would refill their feeder with food. So I would feed the chickens all of our scraps. I would go play with them. I would let them in and let them out. We would collect their eggs. But point being is a lot of the responsibility was on Dan. And there's a little bit of an investment that comes with chickens in the beginning because of the coop. And even the feed, if I remember right, is like not the cheapest thing in the world. So those are definitely like, that's our next animal hope and dream, our chickens again. I loved having chickens and I really miss having fresh eggs. Recently, I was actually watching a video about raising quail for quail eggs, but I feel like that's probably not in our near future, maybe in the distant future one day, but chickens, please. So someone asked what diffuser I use, you can see it in the background, and what essential oils. And I have been using the same essential oils and diffusers now for like 5 years, and that is Young Living. I'd used other brands previously to that, but I wouldn't remember if you paid me what they were. Oh no, I did use doTERRA for a minute, but I also used random store brands too. Point being, I know there is a lot of controversy around essential oils. People tell me all the time, and I just want to throw this out there. I feel the same way about oils that I feel about diet. I think it's important to consume information and hear what's out there, but I also think it's really important to listen to your body. And I don't use essential oils, I think, in as much as certain people who are always concerned about me think that I do. And I also just think it's like, I don't know that I think everything is the same for everyone. And I think that there's so much toxic overload like coming at all of us all the time. I don't know that I'm that concerned about some lemon essential oils. So I'm wary. I'm not like ingesting oils really at this point, although I did just put a drop of peppermint oil in my mouth the other day. I do like that for a breath freshener from time to time. But yes, so that's my current oil situation. I just put a blend called Valor on my wrist this morning. It's like my favorite blend. And yeah. Ooh, am I gonna do this? I'm just gonna say it. Someone asked, what is something that you support that people may be surprised about? And I'm just going to go out and say it. I support the legalization of cannabis. And the reason I support it for a lot of different reasons. First off, let's just back up and say straight up, it's a plant. It's a plant that, in my opinion, God gave us to use. And I know I've heard a lot of people who will say like, poison ivy is the plant. Like, we don't eat poison ivy or whatever. And I'm like, but that's because we've used common sense and we've realized that poison ivy causes a lot of problems. Now, I'm not going to say that cannabis doesn't cause problems. Similarly to alcohol, I think alcohol causes problems. I think a lot of things that can be potentially even helpful for people can cause problems when either, taken or used in like too much or in the wrong way or in the wrong situation. I mean, let's be real here. You could kill yourself by drinking too much water. So I think that there's a lot of things in life that just require discretion. But I think that considering that fentanyl is killing people, I mean, in large number, I know someone who just lost their cousin to fentanyl, and she's not the first person that I know that's lost someone to fentanyl recently. And so to know that that's legal and that doctors are able to prescribe that to people. But then a plant that people can grow in their backyard that's been around forever, that if you're into American history and you want to go back early to the founding fathers who would say things like, don't ever let them get rid of our hemp plants. This is important for X, Y, and Z. I think it's super ridiculous and actually super nefarious, to be honest. To those of you that don't know this fun fact, it's not a factoid. I actually found out that factoid means it's fake. It's a fact, apparently, right? Everything's apparently. But Henry Ford, for example, built a full car. I thought it was just a bumper, but apparently it was actually a full car out of hemp. And when you do that, apparently these cars, like, they don't dent. They just like bounce off of each other. Like, it's completely indestructible. And so I think there's actually a lot of things with that plant, a lot of uses that could happen from that plant. And I just think I'm going to back up and say it again, considering the problem that we have here in the States with pharmaceuticals literally killing people. Even, let's back up. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I even think more basic bay things like antibiotics, which thank God for antibiotics in the right place in the right time. But I even think that antibiotics are not killing people, but you get my drift, like causing problems. And so I think a lot of people realize that, though, at this point, that it's like kind of ridiculous. I mean, the fact that there are kids that have seizures that can be stopped by using the correct strain of cannabis, I think it's just, I don't know, it's ridiculous. And if you've never suffered from anything where cannabis has really helped you, I think that it's easy to just believe negative hype or judge it. But I think that, I don't know. I don't even think I need to expound any farther because I think I've already summarized my thoughts. Now, I will say, I don't know how many of you are going to be surprised to hear that because I've been saying for a long time, I'm very pro CBD. People have asked me how I've dealt with back pain, and in recent years, it's been CBD. So I just started my period the other day and my cramps were pretty severe, and I was able to reach for CBD pills rather than an Advil. And honestly, in my opinion, I think that CBD is way less toxic and harmful than even an Advil or a Tylenol is. So yeah, I think it can be abused just like anything. And I don't need to go on. I need to answer the next question because we're like 20 minutes in already. So someone asked if Dan is still into NASCAR or if he is retired. And the answer to that is it's on pause. He can't say he's retired because he just stopped because it didn't make sense, but he was just doing it before. Like, there was never really like an official, like, I'm gonna be a NASCAR driver now and now I'm retiring. It just kind of happened, and I could totally see Dan racing again one day, but I don't know if or when that will ever happen. I mean, he has not sat behind his simulator, for example, in over a year because it was totally packed away before we moved here, and now we don't actually have a place to put it. I think I mentioned that in a recent video that our garage, we have a 3-car garage, and one of the garages is going to be converted into an office for Dan and I to keep our stuff in, because in the house we only have 3 bedrooms. So we have our master bedroom, Logan's bedroom, and a 3rd bedroom, and we don't want to use that 3rd bedroom for another office. We want it to either be a guest room or, God willing, another kid's room. And also the thing is, it's in such close proximity that, so Dan's simulator, it kind of like vibrates, and he has to do, like, there's gears on it, like a real car. So it's kind of loud. Even though he's in headphones, it's kind of loud. And both of us just feel like, you know, in the past, when Logan goes down to sleep, we're able to do whatever we want, including pursuing our hobbies. And so oftentimes he would go to sleep and we'd end up in the office, like, I'd be playing piano and he'd be racing, or he'd have his bass out. And here, that's just not an option. So once we have the office set up, I'm very excited for both of us to be able to do that again. And I know that he's super excited to be able to race on a simulator again. So he has no plans to race as of now, but at the same time, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if and when he does it again. We actually, so another fun fact, Dan used to be a part of a racing team that was actually based in Idaho. Now, granted, that team is actually in southern Idaho and we're up in northern Idaho, but I find that kind of funny and ironic as well that we're like in the same state as his old team, because we weren't before. He would travel here for different things. He would travel all over the US. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Along those same lines, someone asked me if I still do music. And the answer is kind of. Like, I will play piano when I get a chance, which, speaking of, I just uploaded earlier in the week on my Patreon a clip of, like, a long clip. Well, I did a little intro clip just talking about hobbies and stuff and my thoughts around starting something new. But then the second half of the video are just like, it's raw footage of me practicing piano and singing. And so I do occasionally, but I have no intentions of like leaving music behind. Like, I would love, 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 once we get our office set up, to have a little recording situation set up. We actually own like a super nice microphone that I bought a few years ago after recording a song with Landon Austin. It was the mashup I did with him of Jimmy Eats World, and I can't remember the other song.
Just try your best. Try everything you can. And don't you worry what they tell themselves when you're away.
And I loved the way my voice sounded on his microphone, that I was like, that's the mic I want. So we ended up investing in that microphone. So I'm hoping to be able to record and put out more music in the future. To those of you that don't know, I have like a Spotify, iTunes page or whatever with all of my old stuff that I've recorded over the last few years. But I really am excited and hopeful to get to do more. I actually have a few songs specifically in my mind that, like, if and when I get to do this again, hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll just see what God has. I know kind of some of the things I want to record next, including Amazing Grace. I really want to record my own cover of Amazing Grace because that song has really just meant a lot to me the last couple of years. But we'll see. So someone asked my thoughts on Catholicism. I don't know why I said it like that. Because I say everything weird, let's just be honest. And I don't really know what my thoughts are. Obviously, I was raised a Protestant. I am a Protestant. Although I want to know in the comments, because there's something that I can't quite pick up on. Is the word Protestant commonly used by everyone, or by using the word Protestant, is that kind of like you acknowledging or bowing down to the fact that like that was the original church? Because there's a lot of debate about this, right? Like, even though obviously the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation, happened a little over 500 years ago and there was a split, there's still a lot of Christians that believe that, like, no, not all Christians were part of the Catholic faith. A lot of Christians were still doing home churches and they operated differently in their faith. So I know that's kind of a weird, vague, random question, but I've been wondering about that. But that's what I am. You understand what I'm saying? I'm a non-denominational, I guess you could say, Protestant Christian. Dan and I have never felt any type of like serious draw towards Catholicism. In general, Dan and I have not felt any like super draw towards like rituals in faith in general. I know I already said that. The closest we got, we actually visited an Orthodox church a couple of times a few months ago because we did have some interest in Orthodoxy for a few different reasons. I like a lot of people that are Orthodox Christians. Like, they intrigue me, if that's the word. Also, this whole discussion around church history I find to be fascinating, but I find it really hard to get to the bottom of. Like, it seems to me there's a lot of people that speak with a lot of confidence, no matter what camp they're in, around church history. Like, I know Protestants that like teach church history at schools, and they have a different way that they explain church history than different Catholics that I follow, who have a different way of explaining parts of church history than different Eastern Orthodox Christians that I follow. So I think it still ultimately comes down to like, okay, well, which research do you trust? And then what resonates with you and what makes sense for you and your family. And in general, Dan and I have kind of been in a weird place because we don't really feel a draw to the Catholic Church or even necessarily to the Orthodox Church at this point. But one thing we do like or seem to appreciate about those churches is the reverence, if that's the word. We are drawn to this idea of like, okay, you're in church now, and there is a cadence and a rhythm and a maybe even like a liturgy, even though I know I just said we weren't drawn to rituals. And I realize liturgy is kind of like, it's a ritual, it's a rhythm. But that's been a little hard for us to weigh out and decide like, oh man, what are we going to do? Like we recently visited I think it's called EREC Church. It's actually a denomination that was started by that same guy I mentioned earlier, Doug Wilson up in Moscow. And it's much more liturgical. Like all of the songs they sing are only psalms or hymns. And there was something we really liked about that. Also, the kids all stay in the service. That's a whole other thing Dan and I are like really torn on right now, is this idea of like children's ministry and all of that. I don't like dropping Logan off. Logan doesn't like being dropped off. So I pretty much don't drop him off because it goes against my mommy instincts. When he doesn't want to be there, like I'm not going to force him. And when we've attempted to kind of like, oh, it's okay, let's see if he calms down. Like he doesn't forget. He doesn't want us to leave. And that really resonates with me, you know. Growing up, maybe I've told this story before, maybe I haven't. This sounds like a side tangent because it is, but also it kind of all loops together. I had something happen in 4th grade, and I actually just connected these dots recently. I was like, that's totally part of why I don't trust like authority figures, even when they're background checked or they're at your Christian school, which I want to say, I think this is obvious, right? But maybe not. I always never really mean like I never really mean what I say. Like I mean it, but if any of you were in front of me and you were like, what, like my kid's at a Christian school, I would totally be like, that's fine. Or like, what, my kid loves, you know, youth group or children's ministry. It's like, that's great. I'm just, you know, I speak with this confidence because it's just me by myself and my camera, but no offense as always, right? But growing up at a Christian school, I remember there was this time in 4th grade, and this is what I connected dots on the other day. I was like, that's totally one of the reasons. I had this incident where like a bunch of the kids made fun of me and I ran to the bathroom. It's a whole story I don't need to go off on, but that's the short version. I was being made fun of, ran to the bathroom, stayed in the bathroom the rest of the school day from lunch break. So it was like 12-ish to 3:30. No one came for me. There was no announcement over the intercom. There were no teachers going through bathrooms, and my parents were paying like $350 a month, and it was a private Christian school, and that was $350 a month back in like the 90s. So I don't even know what that would be now. But looking back, I'm like, dang, and I never told my mom. No one came looking for me. And then when the end of the day bell went off, I just like couldn't believe it. I just exited the bathroom and was like, okay, and then got in line with all the kids and went down and got picked up by my mom, and I never told her. And I think looking back, that low-key horrifies me, that like nobody, like I would be so mad if I found that out about my kid, that like he was gone that long and nobody went to look for him, on top of all of those other things like I mentioned, like paying that much money, trusting them because we're all supposed to be in like the same faith, and then oh, they're background checked and whatever, and I was just left alone. And so obviously it's not just that one thing. There's a lot of things that have led me to this point of like, what are we gonna do? Like both of us are kind of like unsure. But yeah, that was another tangent. Let's see if I can answer another question. So Morgan Buffett, just Morgan Buff. I think it's just Morgan Buff, and it says YT on her Instagram. We sometimes interact online, and she actually posted something about her sourdough starter today because she's been watching my sourdough stuff. And that was her question, is how has your sourdough journey positively impacted me, and my health journey? And okay, first off, if you guys haven't seen them, I'm going to link my sourdough playlist down below, because at this point I have like literally the easiest sourdough bread you will ever make. Like if you failed or you don't want to do the work or you're a busy mom, that's the recipe you need to check out. I also uploaded my sourdough bagel recipe this week, which is also easy. I have a all about sourdough starter video I'll link down below. But anyways, I would say part of it is just my mind, right? I love bread. Like I love bread. And knowing like how you think about your food to a degree does impact your body, like how your food impacts you, I think is affected sometimes by how you think about it. I know that's real woo-woo-wee-wah, but I'm just going to say it. And so I do like that, like I've baked it. I know exactly what's in it, assuming they're not lying to me about like what's in my flour, for example, which it looks like I finally got a hold of wheat berries, everyone. So I'm finally going to be grinding my own wheat. That's very exciting. Anyways, mentally, it's affected me positively in the sense that like I love making my own stuff. But I'm going to be honest, as far as health, I don't really know because I wasn't having a problem to my knowledge with gluten beforehand. I just knew that this is the healthiest way to eat bread is to ferment it. And I love sourdough and it's very fulfilling to make it. So I just felt like, okay, if I'm going to keep bread and grains in my diet, which is already highly controversial, like a lot of people have written like entire books like Grain Brain about just how gluten and wheat, especially nowadays, is just like not the greatest for you. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to do it in the best way I can. And even though you might laugh when I say this, because you're like, girl, what are you talking about? You eat it all the time. But I try not to overdo it. And that's partially probably why I utilize the freezer so much. I bake a lot, but we keep things in the freezer and we're trying to keep a little bit of a stash, like we're trying to grow up a little bit of a stash because if God willing, I get pregnant in the next couple of months, I want like some bread in the freezer so that when I have days where I don't want to bake, it's like, I don't have to necessarily because it's stored away. And then the days when I feel better, because I'm just assuming if I get pregnant again, that I'm probably going to feel sick again because I felt super sick both times. Then I'll have them on standby, which that's the end of that thought. And I will lead into the next thought because it ties into that. Someone asked if we had started trying for baby number 2 yet. Oh, that feels weird to say because it's baby number 3, which is so, yeah, weird. But the answer to that is no, we have not. We decided I decided I wanted to really work on my health. I mentioned this, I really felt like when I miscarried, like I was a garden bed that was like depleted and tired. And I just felt like I needed to tend to my garden, to be honest. And I had mentioned to you guys before that there were some specific things like, because I wasn't taking any of my supplements, I knew I needed to get back on them. And more specifically, what I was just going to say, like methylated folate. I supposedly have this MTHFR gene mutation. I need to be on that. I wasn't on it when I was pregnant this last time. And I was told like 15 years ago, I think, 10 years ago. I lose track of time. Basically that if I didn't take methylated folate, that I would be doomed to miscarriages. And so it was really weird to look back and be like, oh my gosh, I wasn't on my methylated folate. And that doctor totally told me that. And it could be coincidence. You never know the reasons, right? And there were a lot of things going on at that time that were not like the way my life was when I conceived Logan. And so I've really spent the last couple months kind of trying to realign those things. Dumb things, right? Like bringing plants back into our house. I finally unpacked my essential oils that I really like. My supplements, that was kind of near the top of the list. Cleaning up my diet. I like brought it into line real fast, like that week. And spending lots of time outside in the sun. Summer came so late here this year. So I've been soaking up the sun every single day. And other than the fact that I'm sick right now, we've actually been sick a couple times recently. Generally, I feel like I've gotten healthier and stronger, and that feels really good. And so on top of that, there's some other things we're trying to line up in our life, like separate, that I don't really need to go off on. But as those things, continue to line up and we continue to walk down this path, if I'm being honest, I can see us trying again here probably in the next like 1 to 2 months, which maybe you're asking because maybe that's what I said before. But that's how I'm feeling now at this point. That's how we're feeling at this point, is maybe in the next 1 to 2 months, we're going to start trying again. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling a little like, okay, I think I'm getting ready. Like, whereas some women, when they miscarry, I know they want to try immediately. I did not have that reaction. In fact, if I'm being honest, there was part of me that was just like, I don't want to do this again because it was so scary and overwhelming and painful and heartbreaking and low-key horrifying. But as my old therapist used to say, emotions come in sets of 3, which really just means that everything is layered, right? You can feel lots of different things at once. And so that was one layer, but that is not the layer. And I really want more children. And so really what it came down to was, hey, you can honor that, Nikki. You can pause for a moment, care for yourself, do what you need to do, but it's okay. Like, God will give you strength. I don't know why I'm talking to the camera like the camera is me. It's like me talking to myself. But that was kind of where it ultimately settled. Like, man, it's okay. God will give you strength. I mean, there's so many of you guys that have commented and left messages telling me how many miscarriages you have. There was one girl who left a comment that had like 8 miscarriages and ended up having, I think, like 3 or 4 children. So she had way more miscarriages than she had children. And so really, there's just kind of this part of my mind that is just trying to accept and get used to the fact that, like, hey, just because it, I've mentioned this, my mom, my grandma, to our knowledge, never had a miscarriage. It's normal. Like, it happens to women and they still have healthy babies. So just trying to, like, settle in that and take care of myself, and yeah, hopefully God will give me another bouncing baby, give us another bouncing baby soonish in life. We'll see. So someone asked how I keep my hair so beautiful and healthy. Thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you kind of what I do. Take it or leave it. Obviously, I don't know why I gave that preference. Basically, I don't heat style my hair very often. I'm going to throw that out there. I wear my hair often in protective hairstyles. So every night when I go to sleep, my hair is in some kind of like protective hairstyle. Usually it's braids, very loose braids, because you don't want the pulling and the tugging, but it helps my hair from getting knotted and matted. Now I actually use like a microfiber towel when I wash my hair to air dry it, or to dry it, and then I'll take it out and I air dry it. Never blow dry. I've used like the same oil product. It's Cheese Silk Infusion. And I don't use it all the time. Actually, I haven't used it in like a few weeks, but I used it the other day from like my ears down on my hair. I like to do deep conditioning treatments, and diet and supplements. I feel like my hair and my skin, like, I use products, but it's kind of similar in the sense that, like, my top focus is health. And then my second focus is just like not beating it up anymore, like letting my hair kind of be and care for it, let it chill. Same thing with my skin at this point, even though that's not what you asked about, but just saying. So yeah. So someone asked, how has eating more animal products affected your, what did they say? Oh, your health, digestion, energy, and skin. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and answer that, I guess. So the biggest thing I feel like I've seen in the last couple of years of eating more animal products, which it's funny, but funny is not the word. I was just telling Dan this the other night. It's like, in so many ways, I'm still such a vegetarian. Like, my go-to is always going to be plants. I have to kind of go out of my way a little bit, not always, but I sometimes have to go out of my way to get in those animal protein type products, because it's not necessarily just like a natural huge craving for me. Like, when I hear other people in the pro metabolic space or Weston A. Price talk about, like their cravings, I'm like, the only times I really experienced that in such a large way was near the end of my actual vegetarian journey, when I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, I think that says something, especially because I felt like I was getting like whole plant-based proteins, and it just was still not hitting the spot. But I will say, this is what I think I've noticed the biggest difference. First off, I don't get the same bloating that I used to get. I used to get severe bloat. Like, every day after dinner, I knew that just what came with my life was a big old pregnant belly and some sharp pains as my body tried to digest the food. That basically never happens anymore. I also, which I know I dealt with nausea earlier in the year, but I think that was a lot of things happening. As a generalization over the last few years, I don't really deal with nausea anymore. My skin, I don't hardly break out anymore, but I don't know. I mean, this is just me being honest. Actually, as I'm saying it, it's kind of weird, because I'm like, wow, is that directly tied to the same timeline? But I think it is. Looking back, I actually really think it is, because yeah, I rarely break out anymore. My mood, I would say, I know the last year has been super like tumultuous for us, but in general, I feel like my mood has stabilized a lot more. And probably the biggest thing, while I can't just point to diet, there have been a lot of things, including using my ARP Wave machine over the last few years. But my strength, I have definitely gotten a lot stronger, and that has obviously, or not obviously, I don't know, affected my chronic pain levels. Now, like I said, it's worth repeating over and over. I think there's a lot of factors. I think that a lot of things in life are very holistic, and there's a lot of things involved in it, but that's probably the biggest change I've made. And I definitely think that that's a large part of what has caused me to get stronger and has lowered my physical pain, is having more animal protein products. And so, yeah, I guess it's kind of weird looking back and laying that all out, but that's kind of the gist of everything. I definitely am someone that, like, you know, my friend calls me a recovering vegetarian, but it's like, I still kind of am one in my heart. Like, it's definitely been a weird transition. And I kind of just follow my heart on some of these things. Like, I do go out of my way to get in those protein products, but I also don't, like, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of things that I eat nowadays in general that it's like, eat it, whether you like it or not type of thing. I kind of try to keep it chill, you know, not put too much pressure on myself or my body, but I attempt to try to nourish it, you know, using my brain as well and what I think is good to the best of my ability. So, yeah. And on that note, someone asked me if Dan has always been on board with my holistic ways, or if it's an ongoing thing. And she said that she's teaching her husband. Now, I will say it's both for Dan. Dan is definitely not like shut down to all of my health stuff, but he's also not the one spearheading this. Like, I know some guys are like super into health and nutrition. That's definitely not Dan. But I also know some guys are like, don't feed me this junk. Like, and they just have really like simple palates and they don't want to try anything new and they're not willing to take vitamins. Like, that's not Dan either. But because it's not really him spearheading the health per se, he still eats and does all kinds of things all the time that I'm like, no, put it down. Like, don't drink the Red Bull. So we're working on it. It's hard though, because I'm the one that's consuming pretty much most of this information. So he's hearing it all relayed from me. He's not the one that's like listening to the long talks about, you know, PUFAs or whatever. So it's an ongoing journey. I'm glad that he's just not completely shut down to it. And on that note, before we go, because he just pulled back up with the truck with Logan, they went to the dump where they get to, Logan loves watching like the trash be deconstructed and torn down. They had to bring some stuff there. But before we go, I wanted to say also, there's low-key a second sponsor of this video. We want to call it a sponsor, and that's my Mercari shop. So at this point, I should have some clothing items listed. Last week, I launched with just some shoes, but I'm hoping that when this video goes up, I've at least listed 10 more items. So if you want to check out my Mercari shop, I'm selling a ton. I'm almost done. I'm selling a ton of things over there in the next couple of months, kind of cleaning out my closet. Everything that I'm getting rid of, there's just various reasons. I don't want anyone to think that it's because like I don't like them anymore or pieces are gross, which you would obviously see in pictures. Most of the things I'm getting rid of, like I have so many clothes. I'm just realizing like if something doesn't make sense for me as a mom, or if it's just a little bit tight, or I haven't reached for it in a while, whatever, then I'm just like, okay, I can part with it. Like there is enough, whatever, like there's enough in the universe for me to get things when I need it. I don't have to like cling on to it. So that's what's up. So I will link that down below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know if you'd like to see more. And that's pretty much it. I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another new video. And that's that. All right. Bye, guys.